Matamutu.
Welcome to the Matamutu podcast. It is episode 7. Can you imagine we've come this far? Wow. 7 episodes in. It's a 10 episode season, so season 1 is coming almost to a close. I'm so sad. Today I have another guest. Woohoo! I'm always so happy when I have guests. I don't know why. Is it a good thing?
It's a good thing.
It is?
Yeah.
Oh, thank God. My guest today is Anita. The story of how I met Anita starts like in 2000 and must be 14. Was it 14?
15.
15,
Yeah.
early 15.
Yeah.
So I used to work somewhere and my boss there didn't feel like hiring somebody, but I made him hire somebody because I was overstressed. So he gave me the job of shortlisting candidates, and there were 3 candidates who made sense from the long list. One was this lady called Anita and another 2 guys. Then I gave my recommendation that Anita is the best candidate.
Aww.
And a couple of months later comes this very innocent looking young lady called Anita into the office.
Yeah.
And I'm not the one who showed her the ways of the world.
No.
She showed that herself.
As innocent and skinny.
That is true. Innocent and skinny. And we've been friends ever since. So now, if you remember a couple of episodes ago, I shouted out to my friend Anita. She was actually in Papua New Guinea at the time. So welcome back from Papua New Guinea.
Thank you.
Is it warm? Is it cold? What kind of place is it?
It's like a Mombasa that is half Mombasa, half Rift Valley, because it's hilly, and then there's the coastal side. You wake up, one side of your bedroom is hills, the other side it's the ocean. So it's a bit of both.
That sounds like fun.
It's beautiful.
It is.
Yeah.
So in this episode of the Matamutu podcast, we are going to talk about beans. Yes, we talked about beans somewhat in episode 2. That was about githeri. But now this one, we want to really do a deep dive on beans. And beans are one of the longest cultivated plants. Humans have been cultivating beans for the past over 6,000 years. And they were also found in the tombs of the kings in ancient Egypt, where they were put in as a sacrifice. Or should I say food for the departed in the afterlife.
Like I wouldn't think that beans would be found in the tombs, you know.
Yeah, there was beans, there was honey, and a couple of other things. So the Egyptians would put in food so that when the departed got into the afterlife, they would have something to give as a gift to the Lord of Death.
Lord. Yeah.
And all that stuff. It's really fascinating.
Yeah.
Beans in one form or the other are a constituent part of diets across the world. But a thing that people don't know, beans are always eaten only after heat treatment, and it's mostly because fresh red beans are poisonous.
Really?
Yes, they have a toxin that is tasteless, but is very harmful. The toxins will break down under the influence of high temperature. So that's why people will boil beans for forever.
The full jiko,
everything,
thing.
Just put them there and leave them there for like 3 hours.
Yeah.
It's so that you can, of course, break down the beans, because when they're dry, they are very difficult.
Yeah.
Very difficult. But also now to really break down the poisons. That's for the fresh red beans. So like these are your wairimos, your kidney beans. Those ones tend to be poisonous when they're fresh. Now, the world's gene banks hold about 40,000 bean varieties.
Wow.
But only a fraction of those are mass-produced for consumption. So like here in Kenya, I think we have, 10 varieties?
10-ish.
10,
I'm just thinking of those gunias I see when I go to a cereal shop, and they'll be
Those
like
ones.
10 gunias. So
Yes.
yeah, you are.
So 10. Those are the ones that are popular. Now, India as a country leads the world in dry beans production. Here in Africa, Tanzania is one of the most important beans producers. That's something I found out and I was like, what?
Really?
Tanzania? I would have thought like Nigeria or Malawi, but Tanzania.
Why Nigeria?
It's because they have a lot of beans, but they have a lot of people.
But maybe Tanzania makes sense, because when you think of, if you're driving down all those, the fertile land and...
Yeah. No, they have a lot of arable land in Tanzania. So I guess, it makes sense. Now, tell me, Anita, what's your first memory of beans?
I think back in primary school,
yes,
we used to carry lunch,
yes,
packed lunch,
yes,
and beans was the easiest meal to make for at least our household, because
yes,
you could cook beans and then they could last like 2 weeks, and every day you do beans and rice, beans and rice, beans and rice. Okay, there's a time, you'd see it's beans and you don't even eat lunch. People are like, are you not having lunch? Like, no.
Kumbe, you're just tired.
Yeah. I love and some other time you'd go to school and then the beans at lunchtime they're smelly. I think that
they've started fermenting.
Yeah, they've started fermenting. Yeah. If they fall in your bag, if they drop in your bag, your bag is gone. You know.
Yeah. That was a wrap. Huh?
Yeah, that's what I remember.
Have you ever threshed beans?
Does that mean removing the?
You need kugonga, please.
No, please.
Ujai gonga?
No, please. No, please.
No, that used to be fun.
Ooh, no,
there was this specific hardwood stick, that we had at my grandma's.
Yeah.
Its business was only for threshing beans. So they would all be thrown in a gunia in a sack.
Yeah.
And then the kids are given the stick in turns, and you chop that sack, my friend. You beat it up.
And then now that I don't know where beans, like before I see the beans. What's normally the thing before the?
Wow, pod. They come from a pod.
Oh, yeah, pod.
They come from a pod.
So those are the things you used to hit.
And then after that, you go into somewhere windy and you throw them in the air with I don't know what the English word for is. In Ikagusi, it's oroteru. So it's
uteo.
like uteo.
Yeah.
So it's a basket, a woven half basket or something. Maybe I don't know what to call it. There's no real, So you go with an uteo and you thresh. So you throw them in the wind, and then the wind picks up the pods and puts them to the side, and then the beads fall down. So these people used to use physics they were really smart.
Yeah, they just didn't know it was.
Just didn't know what it was. So now, beans are high in protein, complex carbohydrates, folate, and iron. And that's why they're recommended by dietitians for pregnant women, especially with the folates and the iron. And proteins, they are a very good source of proteins for adults.
For sure.
And interestingly enough, the adult serving size is 100 grams.
Really?
So like the size of your fist.
Yeah.
Women are supposed to have only 2, men are supposed to have 3. Because they need more protein apparently. But now, many edible beans, including broad beans, kidney beans, navy beans, soybeans, contain, this is going to be a hard word to say, oligosaccharides.
Okay.
Which are a type of sugar molecule also found in cabbage. Now, there's the triple sugar, it's called saccharose, quadruple sugar called raffinose, and a 5 sugar called verbascose. And all these sugars need an enzyme so they can be properly digested. The normal human digestive tract doesn't have any of those enzymes. But the bacteria, the flora in your large intestine will generally digest those. And that process produces gases such as methane, which are then released as flatulence. Now, I have to give a trigger warning. We're about to go deep into flatulence.
Listen, I'm a lady.
Everybody encounters flatulence in life. Everybody. So there's a children's rhyme. It goes like this. Beans, the magical fruit. The more you eat, the more you toot. The more you toot, the better you feel. So let's eat beans with every meal. In my high school, we would have literally beans every day because it was either githeri for lunch or rice and beans. But we really used to look forward to rice and beans, which was Wednesdays and Saturday. What happened one day? This is a story that I'm not very proud to tell, but I have to tell because it's very flatulence related. So it's a January afternoon, it's hot. Guys they've gone to lunch and eaten their beans and come back to class. I think that day they hadn't really soaked the beans very well. Yeah. Because every other person had flatulence in class.
Based on their different enzymes.
But because it wasn't that much of a problem other days, but that specific day, it was an issue. So what happened was that I think it started with the back row. So back then we used to call them silent killers. So I think the back row started with silent killers, and I was in the back row. So maybe I'm just there studying. I think we didn't have class that day. The teacher must have been gone for something, or I don't know. So I'm in the back row. Then somebody's just like, "Ay, Maze, is something dead in here? What's happening?"
Silent ones are the worst.
So kidogo. In the middle row, you just hear, "Ay, Maze, kuna mtu ameoza."
Kuna mgonjwa. Tumor.
And then I think now it became a competition between the guys in the back and the guys in the middle, to the point that within that hour, we actually had to evacuate the class because it was too much. Flatulence happens. It happens.
I don't know about flatulence. No, but what I know is beans with pili-pili, right?
Yes.
I feel like the flatulence is not just...
It's a whole other level.
It's a whole top... Is it tier?
Tier.
Top tier flatulence.
I agree, totally. Now, you're out there, you're listening to this podcast and you're wondering, beans, but I love my beans. How can I reduce the gas in the beans? So it's not the gas. The beans don't have gas. It's the sugars that your tummy now goes and makes into gas. And some ways to reduce this, you can use spices to actually help break down the sugars. So spices like cumin, fennel, and ginger are very, very good for that. The popular one, and the one that a lot of people know, is to soak beans. So if you soak them overnight and you change your water at least twice. So that means that if you're going to soak for 12 hours, after every 4 hours, I guess, you'll be changing water. Yeah. So the idea is that as they absorb the water, the starches get released into the water. So you want to change the water often. That way, by the time you're coming to now drain them fully and boil in fresh water, the starches are reduced to a minimum.
Does that mean, James, that that when you boil the beans, the water that remains, should you throw away?
Oh, please do.
But I find it tastier if a little bit of that water is in the...
Say what?
Yeah, I find it...
Okay, I agree with you to some extent.
Yeah.
But like, it's like, yo, do you really want to do that to yourself?
But you have put spices in the water, in the thing.
Well. Okay, there's a recipe that I did one day. It was a Cuban recipe for njahe. And I will go into depth when I do the njahe episode. But for now, let me just say that the recipe called for you to not throw all the water away.
Yeah.
You have to reserve like half a cup to put back in.
Yeah, in your stew.
Yeah, well, there was a lot of flatulence that day, yeah?
But it tastes, you know what? Life is too short to eat bad food.
It really is.
If the water is going to make it, kesi badai.
Kesi badai.
Yeah.
Well, my mother doesn't like you have to really dry out her beans.
Yeah.
Like she doesn't even want to even see a little bit of water. She wants them dry. So like what I'll usually do is I'll boil the beans for her and then fry them dry on like a cast iron skillet so that they release all the water and become a bit crunchy. She loves that. But if you do a stew,
nah. Do you like them dry or stewy?
Man, I like them stewy.
Me too, I like them stewy.
But it's not me. I live alone, so there's no.
Yeah,
there's
maybe
no
it's a thing for loners, people who live alone.
Yes.
Yeah, there's no worries.
There's no worries. Now, another way to reduce the gas is to slow down. So, like, a lot of people will shovel the food into the mouth and chew 2 chews and it's gone. But part of the digestion of beans, especially, starts in your mouth. So you need to chew the beans properly.
I know what it's called, mastication.
Hey.
But I'm not sure you want to check that.
No, it is actually mastication. You're spot on. You're spot on. Good job.
Yeah.
And make sure you also drink plenty of water when you're doing beans. The water helps keep things moving, so the beans also don't stay in the gastrointestinal tract.
So is there a specific time that's best to eat beans, like recommended? Should you do lunch?
Now, that's where it gets a bit interesting because different dietitians will tell you to eat beans at different times. So some will tell you to do beans for dinner, it's not a worry. Others will tell you have your beans in the morning. So like the standard English breakfast has baked beans.
Yeah.
So the dietitians will tell you to do it in the morning. So by the time you're eating your next meal, the beans will already start moving along the way and they can, go. But really, it's, eat when you're hungry. I mean, really, there's no, hakuna standard. Hakunanga standard kwa
Hakuna
stuff.
standard.
Hakuna, you just eat. But yeah, drink lots of water. I read somewhere that you can have your fruits and anything sugary like 2 or 3 hours before you eat the beans to reduce the amount of gas that they may produce. And I think that's a good rule of thumb.
I think so, and for most foods, because the I think enzymes that break down different foods are different. Yeah.
Yes.
So you don't want to eat everything at the same time.
But see, they all end up in the stomach anyway.
No, but they're broken down in different parts.
Okay, polybus.
Yeah.
Polybus. Now back to happier things so that we can move on from flatulence. In the 6th century BC, a philosopher that we all know called Pythagoras.
Red logbook is like
Red, it was green.
Hey, okay, no, different eras, people.
Sorry,
different eras.
Ours was green, and then to make it worse, even the first edition had some errors, so I had to look for a second edition. Which is another story for another day. Pythagoras had a deep philosophical dislike of beans. So him and his followers actually did not like beans. Some historians reported that his aversion was due to the belief that legumes contained the souls of the dead.
Oh, wow.
So like, wow.
Yeah.
Souls of the dead. Where did you get that from? Now, approximately 71,000 people in the world have the last name Bean. Guess who's the most famous of them?
The comedian.
Mr. Bean.
Mr. Bean.
Which is not his actual name, but
Yeah.
it's so cool.
Yeah.
In ancient Greece, minor public officials were elected by drawing beans. So what they would do is that they would put a bunch of black beans and one white bean in a pot. And then the person who drew the white bean from the pot got the job. That's a very nice way of electing somebody. So it's very random.
It's very random.
It's very random. Like there's no hakuna cha popularity.
So there's one white bean.
Just one.
That would not work in Kenya. But
Of course not. Of course not. Of course not.
There'd be many white beans.
Now that reminds me of bean counters. There's that term. Have you ever heard it? The bean counter.
No.
So it's usually used in a very disparaging manner to mean somebody who's fixated on the details. So usually an accountant, because counting the little details.
Yes.
So they're very fixated on the trivial details instead of the bigger picture. Time for some guest questions. Woohoo! This is my favorite.
Oh man!
Dun, dun, dun.
Listen, as we have established, I'm speaking to a man who cooks.
No. So you eat. Don't you eat?
I eat.
Don't you eat?
But
So tell us, what's your favorite bean, and how do you usually make it?
My favorite should be I'm sorry, I don't know the name. The red one, the one that's very. I don't know. No, it's very. It has a local name.
Wairimo.
It should be Wairimo.
Yes.
And how I cook it, shout out to my cousin Nicholas
Yes.
Beckison.
Yes, Nicholas.
So my cousin Nicholas Beckison, who lives not very far away from you, when we were still young, we used to eat the random beans, and then went to his house and he put a lot of pili, and I love pili, and that just changed the beans for me. So typical, onion, tomato, and the usual, just the typical. I like my beans basic. I don't like a lot of spices.
Wow.
And then I put the pili. That's it for me.
That's it
for me.
That sounds so basic. I'm
But
sorry.
stewy.
Okay.
A little bit.
Yeah, you have
stewy.
to have a bit of stew in
A
the
little
beans,
bit,
man.
yeah.
It's when those beans have just been harvested from the shamba, then they are called new beans, right? Now I love new beans. In Kikisi we call them amatobe, and I love amatobe with chapati. Because chapo mbili beans is an institution, and you usually can't have more than mbili.
I know that. I know that because you have made me eat beans in Turkana.
Oh, I did.
Beans and chapati.
Oh, that was so good. That was so good, though.
I know know that. Yeah.
Yeah. No, wait, and we looked for those beans, huh?
We looked for those beans. We looked, and James, he was like, I know this beans and chapati will be the best thing you have ever eaten. I'm like, Turkana beans and chapati, really?
But it slapped, didn't it?
It was really nice.
Thank you. So what's a bean recipe that you've heard of and you want to try?
You know what?
Yes.
Tell me a bean recipe I should try.
Okay, so there's this Mexican recipe. It's called refried beans. Basically, you fry them, and then you mash them, and then you fry them again.
But that sounds like muduya.
What is that? Tell me.
Muduya.
Tell me.
Muduya is ancient.
No, it's not that ancient, I'm sure.
You fry them, mash them, fry them again. It sounds like where I come from, in Tiriki land.
Yes.
We do that. We mash beans and then we fry them and mash them and you eat them. When you eat them, your stomach is gone for about 2-3 days.
Easily.
You cannot. You cannot feel. You can't feel it.
You can't do much.
Yes, it's Mexican, really.
Yes.
Really?
So like, okay, I guess then it's Mexican and Tiriki. That's a cool thing. I've not tried it. I really want to try it, and I want to make tacos. You were in Papua New Guinea, which I think is like the farthest place from this world. Tell me, did you eat beans when you were there?
Yes, I did eat them with tacos.
Is it?
Yeah, we had a random, it's a potluck something.
Yes.
And my friend from Australia, but we were a little bit woozy, and she said, this is the easiest meal we can make. And we went to the supermarket and we bought beans and the
taco
and
shells.
the tacos. Yeah. And yeah, so that's what I ate, but I didn't eat typical Papua New Guinean beans food, but I plan to do that when I go back.
Okay,
yeah,
that's fantastic. Beans aside, what's been your go-to pandemic recipe?
So here's the thing. Funny thing how everybody put on a lot of weight during the pandemic.
Yes.
I cut off weight during the pandemic.
We are sorry.
Oh, and
we humans are not worthy.
No, you're not.
At all.
And what I did is, I realized I don't have to, again, you'll call me basic, but I realized I don't have to put so much into my food in terms of fat and stuff to make it tasty. You can really make really tasty food with just your spices and everything. So my go-to has been a lot of broiled and stuff in the oven that I don't have to put a lot of.
Just throw it there and forget it for like 20 minutes and you come back and eat.
And I come back and eat it and take my time. And I take my time while eating it, like phone aside, everything else aside, focus on the food.
Thank you so much, Anita, for joining me on today's episode of the podcast. I've had a fun time. I don't know if you have.
Thank you for having me. You've made me realize I don't know so much. I know very little about beans.
It's okay. Every day is a learning process.
But I'm going to leave here with a recipe. You better have made beans for me.
Guy, oh my God. My stress. Thank you, listeners, for tuning in on this episode of the Matamutu podcast. Make sure that you're following us. The social media handles to use are at Reumac on all platforms. That's REUMAC. You can now subscribe to the podcast. Just search in your Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or Spotify for Matamutu and hit subscribe so you don't miss on new episodes that are coming out every fortnight. So in the next episode, we're going to talk about uji porridge. And that one's going to be an interesting one. So make sure you listen out for that. And have fun, guys. I'm not going to tell you to keep anything because beans are everything.
Matamutu.